Welcome to another edition of Talk City Greensboro, produced by GTN, featuring interviews and events happening around town. It's an easy way to stay in the know while you're on the go. Subscribe to Talk City on iTunes, Pandora, or SoundCloud so you can keep up with what's going on in Greensboro City, government, and beyond. I'm your host, Rodney Dawson, and I wish others could be as fortunate as I am to sit to the left and to my right, Rosemary Clyde.
So glad to be here. So glad to be here. We're talking about some really tough stuff though this week. Hurricane Helene, catastrophic. Was from Western North Carolina. I don't say is. I think is. It is still very much a now thing. It's not in the rearview mirror at all. Category 4 storm, widespread flooding, mudslides, dozens of towns, took hundreds of lives to date, and quickly. North Carolina particularly, our neighbors just kind of rushed to help and wanted to find ways to help. And of course, Greensboro was part of that and a leader really in rescue, recovery, support, aid. Deputy City Manager Chris Wilson is with us today. I know you were in the weeds with this all last week. So kind of talk about that a little bit. Like how is the city really supporting our neighbors in Western North Carolina and how did that happen that we have been able to do that?
Sure. Yeah, you're right. We've been front and center, but we're in the great company of a lot of sister cities in the state and FEMA. How that happens is when we have a disaster, which, by the way, I don't think I've ever seen anything quite so devastating as this in our state. Right. But when a disaster does happen of this magnitude, the state emergency management system reacts rather quickly. And believe it or not, we have a plan for such incidents. Okay. Maybe not planning for something quite so devastating, but we have a plan in which we react to the state's leadership along with a lot of other cities and counties. And as part of that plan, each of us has areas of expertise in which we can assist, whether that's with infrastructure or public safety, what have you. And so those requests come through the state via what they're seeing there on the ground, working with counties and cities there in the area. And that's really how we got the call to action. Beyond that, Greensboro is just such a loving and caring place. There was much that started to happen organically here in terms of working around donations and efforts to get information out and trying to help one another that was well beyond what we were working under with the state's emergency management system. I'm certainly very proud of that as well.
We're going to ask you later on about the community support that you just spoke of, but a lot of us don't really get the full magnitude of what's happening because we're not there and we don't witness it. When I was stationed in Kansas, I saw my first tornado. So now when I see tornadoes, it's different, and I see the effect and the damage. Same thing can be shown here. We got social media that has pictures, and of course the media itself. But we have first responders over there that come from Greensboro that can come back and give us an account of what they're seeing. Talk to us about what you're hearing from our first responders about the damage they're seeing in Western North Carolina.
Okay. Yeah, sure. I'll just say we had about 80 personnel in Western North Carolina at one point, and that's going to rotate and shift from time to time because we're going to be there for many days, weeks, months to come, and that'll be based on need. But, and I share that sentiment. Mm-hmm. So you see a lot of this on social media, and I'll just say up front, I've seen a lot of information that wasn't great and pictures that weren't accurate. But when you look at the real information, it is absolutely devastating. Mm-hmm. You had an amount of rainwater rush into what is really one of the more challenging terrains that you could deal with in terms of that type of activity. Mountains are almost these perfect watersheds in which you can hold water and it stays, for a period of time and it has nowhere to go. And so it goes into buildings and other places and it was terrible. So our personnel that are there are sharing things. They are sharing photos of what they're seeing. And what we were called to do is a little unique. A lot of times we'll send public safety personnel, particularly fire, for rescue or life support. Same thing with PD, our 911 operators helping with communications because communications were down. I think this is one of the first incidents where I've seen us send infrastructure support where we sent a lot of resources, equipment, services into an area to help reestablish
Water.
what was completely washed away.
Wow.
So the photos I was seeing from our crews on the ground there were just really hard to look at. You were seeing whole systems. We all know water pipes, sewer pipes, all these things are deep in the ground. But they were completely exposed because whole sections of a mountain or whole sections of a street were just gone. And so you could see where things stubbed out and those systems were completely wiped out. And, that was in multiple locations. It's devastating for any area. A area like Asheville, that's terrible for the folks that are there and all the businesses and things that we all travel to see. But you've got lots of surrounding communities too that were just completely cut off. When you take that infrastructure away, that is such an essential life function. You are completely separated, not just physically, but you're separated in so many ways. So not only are you not with water, you have no power, you have no connectivity. We all use our smart devices now to stay informed and connected. In many cases, you had no ability to do any of that. So it's been very hard to even see and witness. We know loss of life is one of the things that has been experienced with this event. That number could certainly increase because there are still folks who are missing. It's just so overwhelming. So I would say, as you think about personnel that are in the area trying to assist, we're all very proud of that, but think about them from the perspective of what they're also having to witness.
Right.
They're seeing, and certainly I won't go into detail, but they're seeing a lot of things that are just really hard to face and really hard to deal with. So, the things that we're doing on the ground, we're supporting life functions. We, in fact, are doing, up until last week, I was still getting stories of search and rescue. I think at council meeting recently, it was shared that a 9-year-old was saved from a mudslide. That is incredible. That could have gone terribly wrong had our folks not been in the right place at the exact right time. As things shift and we start to see improvements, and there's a little bit of hope each day, the dangers become different. So as we started to see power come online, we started to see house fires.
Right.
Wow.
Because either you had something already tied into your system that was on and it surged, or perhaps you had water that was standing. We saw 2 house fires just like that. Yeah. And so, luckily we had personnel there to help and respond to that. So those are sort of the things that we're seeing, helping with. PD has been supporting their local PD because in many cases, not only are they so spread out trying to help, people get to where they can be safe and get to access to needed things, but many of them struggled with loss of vehicles and equipment and
homes,
infrastructure.
Family,
It's just completely overwhelming. So, we're very proud to be there, also very hard to witness, and certainly our 911 operators have taken in some really challenging calls, and they were doing that for 6 different counties at one point.
Wow.
Can I sneak one in right quick? I'm thinking about as we got roads that have been devastated or no longer there, and you talk about fires that emerge after the power's turned on. And I'm thinking about how are we getting around? Are they talking to you about how the struggles or challenges it is to get to a house that's on fire or get to a site that needs repair?
Yeah, so it is incredibly difficult, even coming in. So at the very beginning of the aftermath of the event, even getting into the area, that had to be navigated. And getting equipment in was terribly challenging because, we have to have the same level of support anybody does. So, gas was an issue at one point. If we're sending equipment, guess what? We need gas too to get in. So, getting these large vehicles and things in was terribly challenging in the beginning. We know that even from the standpoint of getting resources into the area, utilizing airspace was a challenge at one point because you've got different operations going on. So you're trying to get things in, but you're also still doing search and rescue. And so the reserve was in the area. There were lots of choppers in the area. That's something that's hard to navigate. there are areas you still just can't get to, period.
We've seen mules. I mean,
Yeah,
really,
exactly. And you know, that's a reality. That's one of the challenges to dealing with an event like this. Some of the pictures that I got, particularly from the infrastructure standpoint, you guys both know I worked out in the field for many years, used to dealing with heavy equipment. When you use a backhoe or a track hoe to try and dig out an area and put in a pipe, you have to have sure footing. It's a heavy piece of equipment. The pictures I saw, we were dealing with, you know, maybe 5 foot of a road left, hugging that space and planting down with the hopes that nothing else gives way underneath because a good portion of that's washed down, you know, the mountain. Trying to get into that space and then even lowering people into that space to do the work is just, it made me nervous even looking at the pictures. Heights are not always my friend, and I can only imagine how they were feeling being right on the edge of these spaces. So yeah, that's a great point. It's been terribly difficult. Gets a little better with each day, but remember, we're still just working into areas that you can't hardly even touch at this point.
Right. We're only 10 days basically into, as we're recording this, and so as we move forward, you know, what does that look like from? We just kind of scratch the surface of what the work is going to be. What do you think the state response and our part might be in that as we kind of move forward into more of a recovery stage?
Well, I would say first and foremost, you know, from what has been provided to me, both the state and FEMA have been absolutely wonderful.
Good to hear.
And incredibly supportive and made the work easier for those folks who got into the area to provide assistance. But the needs will shift every day. So, you know, what you're dealing with right now is complete devastation, complete washout, complete loss. It's reestablishment of connectivity, reestablishment of life functions. As you move away from some of those, we've got to get it done right now, functions, the work continues for many, many days. So it's also the cleanup, it's the removal, it's the rebuild. That will require additional assistance from different parts of really any city or county, and we're prepared to do that. Right now what we're doing is we're monitoring what the state is requesting, and we actually have various departments on standby right now because we know the next set of functions will be something to the extent of removal of debris and cleanup.
You talking about that, and I've thought about that a lot. What do you do with all of that? I mean, where does that go?
It really depends on the options that are available to them. You know, if that were here in Greensboro, you know, we have sites that we collect at, and we have neighboring cities we collect at, but what happens if those sites are no longer there? So that's a lot of what has to be commanded on the ground in terms of what options are available to you. That also means some of that may have to be taken to other locations that are further away, which obviously lengthens the period of time in which you can accomplish some of those things. So it's, you know, it's a challenge. It's awesome to see everybody come together and help one another. It's terrible that we're having to do it in the wake of such devastation, but those are real challenges for everybody that's involved.
You just opened up something else, you know, talking about the resources that are needed and the money. Of course, the loss of life is paramount, but it's going to take some money. It takes money to send us down there. It takes money to to get rid of debris. And you know, you mentioned earlier on in the podcast that we are a very giving community. You can trace the history of Greensboro and see that. And I was talking to coworkers before that my coworker here, our favorite vacation spot, is in the mountains. Others have family there. So for this giving community that wants to reach out and help, and we know we have donations in place, but how can we help? How can the rest of us put forth something?
So a couple of things I would say first and foremost. So for residents that may be concerned that, hey, you're sending a lot of staff and you're doing a lot of things. I think everybody's been incredibly supportive, but in the back of their mind, they're probably wondering about how we deal with things here at home. We've been very deliberate in our rotations and spreading out how we respond so that we're not impacting Greensboro. And that's a challenge, but a challenge that we should meet. So we're making sure that we meet our needs here too. The general public may not know this, but certainly when you work with FEMA and you work with the state, there is a process in place by which funds are reimbursed to cities that are assisting in many ways.
Okay.
So I just want the public to know that piece. Two, at the very beginning of this, I received hundreds, if not thousands, of messages from people who wanted to help.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing I said is money to an organization that's on the ground is your best bet.
Okay.
Because donations are great and that continues to be a good way to contribute. But really, when you're working in an atmosphere where it's so hard to navigate, kind of like we were talking about earlier, and you're still assessing what is needed, funding from an organization that's on the ground helps them react and do what they need to do to get you exactly what you need. Red Cross, Samaritan's Purse, Salvation Army, there's lots of folks who are on the ground helping.
A lot of the churches, of course.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times they can do more with your money than we can do when we go to the store. So that's
Yeah.
something to keep in mind too.
Totally, because they're there and they know what's going on in real time. So I would encourage that. There are certainly ways, and our Guilford Works partners have set up some donation sites that are collecting some of those goods and the listing of things that we know are paramount to continuing life functions. So if you can do that here at home, and then that way it's coordinated with an organization who is going into the area with a trip that's coordinated as opposed to everybody trying to flow into an area that's difficult to navigate. Lastly, I would say the state has actually propped up a website in which if you are a builder, if you are a person with equipment or a special set of skills or things that you know will be helpful to the restoration of the area, they're asking you to sign up on their web portal right now. And then that way, as we have needs come up, we've got a listing or a database of people that we can call upon when we need a special set of skills or something that maybe is not as prevalent elsewhere in the community.
And where can we find that?
It's on the state's site, and I'll provide it to you
We'll get
guys.
that. Yeah, we'll get that link up.
We can put a cute, no problem.
No, we'll get that link up. Chris, I know that this area is a special, you have a special connection to Western North Carolina. It's a place that you have long loved. What has this meant to you to see this happen and then to kind of see what has happened since in the response?
Yeah, so in particular, I'll try to do this without getting choked up. In particular, my oldest son, Josh, who you will know is the one that looks just like his dad. He is in the area. Josh, in his day job, works with youth, particularly in the teenage age range for the Asheville Schools Foundation. Josh lives there in Asheville. Obviously, I was very unnerved.
Right.
And, I was in a special situation here because I desperately was trying to help on our side of the fence and figure out ways to get to the larger community at the same time. In the back of my head and deep in my heart, I knew my son was there, and there was no way for me to really communicate with him.
And couldn't go,
Yeah, and I could not go. That was a killer too, because I'm a doer, as you know.
Right.
So, when I did hear from him, it was just incredible to hear his response. So, he appreciated my concern, but his immediate response to me was, "Dad, if you're helping, here are the neighborhoods that I know are the most vulnerable in terms of reaction, and here's where I know we're going to have some challenges. Could you please pass it on to the state?"
Wow.
Maybe second communication in, I'm just sort of harassing him about what he needs. And he says, "Dad, I'm sorry that I didn't get back to you. You're right. We don't have this. But I had enough. I've been down at the middle school working to try and help the rest of our community today." And I got to tell you, as a dad who is in public service,
Makes you proud.
it makes me incredibly proud. So he shared with me the challenges and the struggles, but his sole focus has been on helping the rest of his community, which is very special to me. This whole area is absolutely beautiful. As you know, Rosemary, I love to hike and be outdoors, and I just know that this devastation has changed that landscape, and it's something that's going to take a long time to recover from. But I think we're getting to see a different type of beauty in Western NC right now that transcends anything that I may take a great photo of, and it's just a beautiful thing to see. I hate what has happened, but the way that community has come together, particularly as a state, is just phenomenal. So I hope other folks will get to see and appreciate that as well.
Well said.
Well said. I'll say like father, like son.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for spending a little time with us.
Absolutely.
Really
Anytime.
Deputy City Manager Chris Wilson, thank you for stopping by Talk City. We appreciate you. All right, and you two listeners, thank you for tuning in. All our viewers, you can stay tuned in weekly by subscribing to Talk City Greensboro on iTunes, Pandora, and don't forget you can download Talk City from SoundCloud. That's it for this week. Thank you for tuning in to Talk City.
Don't forget to watch GTN. It's your official source for news and information about the city of Greensboro. GTN is available on Spectrum Channel 13,
AT&T Verse Channel 99, and Lumos 31.
GTN also streams live on Roku and the city's website at greensboro-nc.gov.